Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master here. Just doing another video. Kind of going back to doing more YouTube videos. Not that I necessarily want to do a bunch of YouTube videos anymore, but this one is on the subject of, did Metallica sell out? And it's a controversial subject for many reasons. It's an eternal debate, and I think I want to try to settle this debate. All right, let's try to get things in position better once and for all. And that's Metallica definitely sold out. Now, let's go back to the late 80s, and you can look at interviews with Metallica. They used to make fun of the idea of having to do a video, and they did the one video. Well, the one video was pretty, many ways it was pretty cutting edge, especially for the time. These obscure movie clips from this movie that was one of the most depressing movies I've ever watched, actually, by the way. Johnny Got His Gun. And it was really good. And they got a huge fan base, including myself, from that video and from that album. So we were kind of expecting, a little bit of the same on the next album. But what had happened is that there was a single that came out, and I bought it when it came out, the Enter Sandman single. This is, I believe it was before even the video came out. I'm trying to get this video to look a little better here. Oh, this thing, I'm trying to do this, yeah, there we go. So, excuse the positioning. I'm working with this little crane thing for my phone and trying to adjust it. So, this album came out, or the song came out, and then the first thing I did was, I was with my ex-brother-in-law in this Dodge Caravan that he was driving, another family member, and put in the tape. He's like, something's different. I'm like, oh yeah, I like it. I like it though, as a kid, a little kid, or preteen or whatever. And he was like, something's not right, something's different about this. So I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. Stone Cold Crazy was the B-side, by the way. That was pretty good. So I bought the album, and I liked it, but it seemed something was missing. And to this day, you grow up with the first four albums, and Garage Days, obviously. You grow up with the first four albums, and you hear the Black Album, and it's like, it's slickly produced, and the songs are a little bit more hollow in a way. Just being honest, this is how I feel. Now, doesn't mean the songs are bad or the album's bad. In fact, I think it stands up more today in a way than it did back then to me. Because when I bought it, I liked it, but I didn't love it. The show I saw in 1991 was awesome. It was better than the album. A lot of the songs being reproduced live were way better. I can't talk about corporate rock or anything when I'm wearing a Rat shirt, but the thing is Metallica sold out. Pure and simple. He used to throw dartboards at Winger. It's even in the Nothing Else Matters video. They have a picture of Kip Winger they're throwing darts at. They used to hate the posers, the hair metal guys. Now, this is my theory, and I was going to do a separate video about this, but I'm not sure I'm going to do this anymore. I think Lars Ulrich, reading the reviews back then, he was really into kind of being an edgelord towards metal people. And he did like a lot more poserish stuff than the rest of the band. And I love John Sykes. I love his work with Whitesnake, Thin Lizzy, and Blue Murder, and solo. But one of his favorite albums of 1988 or 89 or whatever was Blue Murder's debut. He listed that in I think it was in one of these magazines. He also liked Europe a lot, the band Europe, and I think he mentioned some other bands too. But the fact of the matter is that back then, if you were talking about that stuff in the thrash scene, you're a poser. F word, you know, the other F word. I'm not going to say on YouTube. That's just the word that was used back then by metalheads. I'm not trying to excuse it or anything, you know. And that was kind of one of the things. So I think what happened was Lars Ulrich wanted to do the thrash metal version of Def Leppard's Hysteria. He wanted that kind of, you know, that cavernous, mid-paced or slow sound, grooving sound. So, you know, I know they picked Bob Rock at first just to mix or whatever history you read about or hear about. I don't know how true that is, but the fact of the matter is they sold out. I mean, they sold out. They went more commercial, more mainstream. They could have been doing albums like Creator, Exodus, Testament, Sodom, you know, name a thrash band from the 80s, even Voivod. Well, Voivod kind of went more commercial too for a while, but you know, they could have been doing stuff like that. But yeah, they sold out. I mean, they were a corporation by then. By the end of the Black Album tour, they were a corporation. I don't know if it was always a calculated thing to sell out, quote unquote, but I think, in my opinion, they definitely knew that they were already on this level, and this would just like possibly go one way or the other, but probably explode the band as a entity. Now, it's controversial to say the Black Album was a sellout album, but it just was. It doesn't mean it's a bad album. Doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. But it definitely, you know, give you an example. Well, I've already given that example, but you know, a lot of kids would make fun of metal, and they listened to MC Hammer when I was in middle school. It was like, oh, metal, you know. And then a year later, the Black Album came out. They were wearing Metallica shirts. You know, what can you say? Fuck you. You know, you're a hypocrite. Just 1 year ago, you were making fun of me for wearing a Metallica or Iron Maiden shirt or whatever I was wearing at the time. Fuck you. It pissed me off. These preps get into Metallica, man. It just pissed me off, you know. But that wasn't nearly as bad as what happened later. So, around about 93, 94, something was happening in Metallica. You can watch. I was going to do a video about this, and maybe I eventually will. If you watch the live performances, there was a change. First of all, they tuned a half step lower to E flat. That's one noticeable change. And this is when James Hadfield started to kind of yodel a little more, quote unquote. And Lars's drums became a little more sloppy around that time. It was 1994 was the year. And Kirk became a little more sloppy than he already was. So, what have you done, man? What? I don't give a fuck. I know people don't give a shit about my music for the most part. So, just straight up, I don't care. I'm going to continue. I've recorded fucking 5 albums with my project. I'm going to continue to do stuff. I know people do not give a shit. Just to put that out there, I don't care that people don't give a shit, because I'm just going to continue to do it. Shove it right down their throats. To quote paraphrase the manager in This Is Spinal Tap. You know, I don't give a shit. I know my music probably isn't that great to a lot of people or whatever, but I just do it. So before you say that, oh, what have you done? Well, I've done a shit ton of stuff. I know people don't care. Whatever. It's no big deal. I don't give a fuck anymore. Anyways, back to the subject at hand. So there was something about these performances. You can watch a lot of them on YouTube. There was something different. And Hadfield had just gotten to this weird, like, redneck, right-wing kind of thing. I'm just being completely honest. Like, even on the Black Album, like, he had Don't Tread on Me. He's like, oh, I'm sick of complaining like we did on all our other albums about the America or politics. Oh, I'm going to do a pro-America song. They could play it at, the Desert Storm or fighting for oil, all the brown people. Fuck you, James Hetfield, for that. You know, I mean, he didn't say that verbatim, by the way. I'm just, you know, the vibe I got from him. You know, Lars Ulrich was quoted in 1993 or 94 in Rolling Stone that he had been soaking up. Lars, what have you been listening to lately? Wow, oh man, I've been soaking up these records by Alanis Morissette and Oasis. Ugh. Out of all the metal bands that were still doing good stuff in Europe and elsewhere, that's what he would pick, this like alternative pop fucking shit. Oasis isn't as bad, you know, and Alanis Morissette makes a lot of modern pop sound like, her stuff sound great in comparison. But just the, you know, trying to just like disown your metal pedigree something was going on. Now Load is a totally jumped the shark with regards to that. Now Load is not an alternative grunge album, but it definitely has that influence. It definitely has that vibe. It's like groove rock, 90s like alternative vibe on a lot of the songs, like Hero of the Day, you know, and just like some of the main problem with Load is it's fucking, and Reload, they're fucking boring. There's these boring plotting mid-paced songs that wouldn't be too far from fitting on the Black Album, but just are boring and bland. Some of the weirder experiments are actually a little bit better. That's the irony. But to call that Metallica, that's the problem right there. I think they should have just been like a different project. It's not Metallica. It doesn't sound like Metallica. It's not about being a fan or not being a fan. It's like if a band just plays if Iron Maiden just started playing bluegrass, and then just straight bluegrass. I'm just saying, like hypothetically, am I not a fan of Iron Maiden for not liking their new direction? That's stupid. But yeah, you look at the cover artwork and all this stuff. There was definitely a calculated thing going on with that. Oh, the 90s alternative fashions and like gothic stuff, like with Kirk Hammett and the makeup and the kissing and the fur coats and this weird, like, I don't know what it was, but I have a feeling it was probably like the alternative scene in San Francisco like influenced Lars and Kirk. I think they've gone on record saying that. And the music, and just you're hanging out with these martini fucking sipping, limousine liberal fucking champagne drinking, NPR listening fuckwits in San Francisco. And then James Hetfield is in the forest, like listening to Ted Nugent shooting his gun, or maybe he's listening to Rush Limbaugh bullshit or something. And like, what do you get? You get Load, you get Reload. It's not metal and it's not Metallica to me, but it's a sellout because it's like pandering. It's like Iron Maiden wore the same shit on all their albums, jeans and a t-shirt. Maybe they wore a little more spandex in the 80s, but they never wore makeup or anything like that, as far as I know. But Reload and Load are they're pandering to that alternative audience. It's like they're kind of on the fence. They're like, oh, it's a little thrashy, so maybe some of our thrash fans will like it. It's a little bit like actual expression because I'm getting into this redneck southern rock from the 70s again, James Hetfield, blah, blah, blah. And then Lars' or Kirk's little alternative influence, and then like COC or, Trouble or whatever, a little bit in there too. That was more on, Saint Anger had a little bit more, some of that too. But like some of this southern rock, like slash sort of quasi stoner rock, plotting doom Black Album kind of sludgy, not sludgy, but like sludge. Just this muck, this mire. And the fact of the matter is, just for all the commerciality of Black Album on, people are always making excuses about Metallica. It's like, they never sold out. They were doing what they wanted to. How do you know that? How do you know that their tastes change and all this stuff? For all we know, they were influenced. See, they were influenced by other people way too much. That's the thing, the corporation and what the times were changing. It's like saying that, okay, like Jefferson Starship in the '80s. They're using synthesizers, not Starship, by the way. Yeah, Jefferson Starship has more credibility than actual Starship, because Starship is a total sellout. But Jefferson Starship, oh, she listened to Grace Slick started listening to like punk and stuff. But why? Because it was a popular thing to get into. But also maybe she liked it as well. So it's like, it's not black or white. The influences on Load and Reload aren't black and white. But as far as an overall overarching pattern, as far as selling out, yeah, they sold out. But what the real slap to the face, probably, I would say, to Metallica fans or people that are, metal critics or elitists or whatever you want to call it, metal purists, are the albums after Saint Anger. And that's a real controversial thing to say. So we know that Saint Anger was a controversial album. I've already done a video about that. I happen to like the album. For some weird reason, it just resonates with me for some strange reason. Maybe because so many people hate it. No, I'm not a contrarian like that. I like the fucked up sound of it. But people are probably turning it off now, my rant here. But Death Magnetic is almost more of a sellout than Saint Anger or Load in a way. And I'll tell you why. So around like 2003, 2004, NU metal started to kind of die down, and then some of these bands came back. Iron Maiden had already reunited, 99, 2000. Judas Priest just then reunited in 2004. Megadeth we're going back to metal after Risk. You had all these newer bands, and you had all these bands from Europe coming to America for the first time. Like Blind Guardian came in 2002. That was their first U.S. appearance. Gamma Ray too, and I saw them both. Anyways, I saw both those first U.S. appearances. I also saw In Flames' first U.S. appearance too. Black metal was getting bigger. Metalcore is, that's kind of teeters the edge a little bit, of course, of something else. But these progressive bands, Dream Theater was doing pretty well. Power metal, black metal, death metal, thrash metal, even these newer thrash bands were coming out, Dew Scented, Haunted, fucking, what other bands? There was some other bands. Shadows Fall were big. I actually like Shadows Fall. Sorry, I like a little bit of metalcore. New wave of Lamb of God, new wave of thrash metal. I don't really think it's thrash metal per se. These younger kids were getting into metal. People were no longer ashamed of saying the word metal anymore, like they were in the 90s, including Lars Ulrich. We're not metal, we're hard rock. Another proof positive that they sold out. So Metallica saw all this, and 2008 came about, and they did Death Magnetic. And the first things I saw about that, so Metallica kind of, around, after Saint Anger through the Death Magnetic years, they didn't really dress that metal, but they didn't dress like super nice either, other than the infamous Armani picture of James Hetfield, the meme that's out there. You can look it up. It's pretty fucking ridiculous. They didn't dress super nice. It was more nonchalant, with darker colors, but they just kind of dressed normal, short hair and stuff. So around Death Magnetic, they started to grow their hair out. But there was this photo shoot, and I'd have to look for it, but all of a sudden, James Hetfield has a battle jacket with patches and stuff. It's like, oh, well, and Death Magnetic was their return to metal. Oh, well, that's kind of convenient. For fucking 15 years, you've been denying being metal. You've even said you weren't a metal band at one point. You decried metal. You made fun of metal fans, especially, I'm mainly talking about Lars. You've bashed heavy metal music. You've done shitty covers of Merciful Fate, like with bad, guitar solos that sound nothing like it and all are in the pentatonic scale. You've, you know, tried to grandstand on your success, and all of a sudden, oh, now we're back into metal. Oh my God, now we're back. We're back as a metal band. We're Metallica again. Metallica. The old logo returned, even though Saint Anger sort of had the old logo and had a pus head cover. They're sort of half-assed going back to metal back then. Even though they were touring with all that NU metal bands like Limp Bizkit and fucking all that. Oh my God, garbage. So it was just very calculated. If you saw the media, the interviews and the picture sessions and the songs that came out. Now, Death Magnetic is not a bad album, other than the clipping problems. There are alternate mixes though out there. If you look, there's been stuff done with the Guitar Hero files, because they did Guitar Hero Metallica, where they released a whole album on Guitar Hero, and people did their own mixes, which are way better, by the way. Death Magnetic came out Beyond Magnetic and Hardware to Self-Destruct, but now they're back to thrash. They're tuned regularly, or half step, and it's like, you saw this, you're like, well, isn't that convenient that they're doing that now? Why wouldn't they do that? See, the problem is, why didn't they do that back in 2000? Why didn't they like, oh well, we got this alternative thing out, groove, southern rocks, fucking slash stoner, whatever you want to call it, thing out of our system. Now we could go back to metal. I mean, Dave Mustaine did it in 2001, for fuck's sake. That wasn't when metal was kind of on the ascent again, but it wasn't. I mean, Dave Mustaine's a weird schizophrenic kind of dude, with his, one album be super commercial, like Super Butt Collider or whatever, and then fucking the next album will be Return to Thrash. But at least, and another thing about, by the way, Dave Mustaine versus someone like Lars Ulrich or Kirk Hammett in these interviews, I don't hear about or James Hetfield, even, for that matter. Now, Metallica have made some improvements with this, but back around Death Magnetic, the newer bands they listened to were bands that had already done stuff that were styles throughout the 90s and 2000s, but the more popular denizens of that style. For example, The Sword. Man, Lars Ulrich's like, The Sword makes my dick hard. What happened to High on Fire and Sleep and all those bands? Did you not hear about that? See, someone like Dave Mustaine would have already heard about, like, he would have, yeah, we toured, Dave Mustaine would have taken High on Fire on tour. I think Metallica toured with him later, but someone like that wasn't, but The Sword was the most poppy version of that. And same with Dragon Force. Fucking Gamma Ray Halloween started it 30 years ago. But Kirk Hammett's like, there's a new band called Dragon Force. They have a new sound. Who told you that? Fucking your Rolling Stone magazine? Your fucking, the corporate overlords told you about this band? It's like, they're out of touch. It's like fucking George Bush Sr. going to a store and not knowing how to use a supermarket scanner, back in the day. I remember that story. So it's so stupid. It's like, it made me mad, because like Gigantour with Dave Mustaine had real underground metal bands, like, not underground, but more sort of middle tier metal bands that Metallica probably never had heard of, because they're not the most popular commercial versions of that style. So you read these, and there's this battle jacket thing with James, it's like, oh, now you're metal again, because metal's cool, metal's commercially viable. Now you're just riding that wave. It's like, oh, I gotta go more alternative. We'll do that. We gotta go. It's like worse. It's worse than Kiss in a way, because Kiss is just doing this shit. When they went disco or hair metal or whatever, they're doing this just or grunge too. It's worse than Kiss in a way, because it's like Metallica should know better. It's like why I bash liberals all the time. Why I bash the left. You should know better. It's not expected that you're such a fucking dullard, because you're supposed to be this intellectual, superior fucking person that reads books and believes in science and all that, but you're not. You're fucking still as shitty as the redneck on the corner, That's why I talk about that stuff so much. So, yeah, Metallica Sold Out. Metallica sold out, 3 or 4 times. I mean, if you want to really look at it. But I think the most egregious, like I said, the most egregious to me, even though I like the music somewhat, is the Death Magnetic era. Because metal, if you like metal, play metal. Who gives a fuck? I guess they're a corporation, pretty much. Metallica. They have like hundreds of employees. Metallica Inc. You know, so it's, you know, it's a matter of fact. But you know, if metal is cool, what if you don't like it? What if you don't listen to metal? You have drag out your battle jacket just to fucking, you know, show you're a metalhead in 2008 for a photo shoot with Angel Witch patches and Venom or whatever the fuck. It's like 50-year-old men fucking doing that. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite, of course, by saying that, because, you know, but I'm just saying, like, because I have a battle jacket now. But it's just stupid. I think it's stupid because it's like, what about all these other bands? Testament, you know, they got into death metal. You know, they started getting into death metal. They had blast beats on some of their albums from the 2000s and 90s. I mean, I'm not a big fan of their, like, some of their albums are more Pantera worship, and that's not great, but still, like, Metallica playing, like, Hero of the Day. It sounds like a fucking Nirvana song, like a bad Foo Fighters fucking song with a little bit of Metallica mixed in. Fuck that. Fuck that bullshit. Anyways, that's all.